Hey guys, it's Regal here, coach of the Houston HAX. As you can see in the background, I got a sweet logo for this year. I'm going to be starting the 5th season of the National Pokemon Draft League. And this season, I want to change it up and make a couple of videos just breaking down my teams, honestly, just for myself and for anyone else interested, especially in the league, at checking out how I break down certain matchups and how I attack them. So let's get to it. Let's go to the Draft League webpage and just take a look at our matchup this week. We're facing the Anaheim Psyducks. And this coach I have never faced before. So I don't know how they play at all. Usually I like to go back and watch their games and try to get a lead on how they like to lead with their hazards. They like to lead with something offensive. They like to lead with a choice scarfer, stuff like that. And just generally how they play their team, whether it be more offensively or playing for a certain sweeper or what have you. So I don't have any information on this. This is a brand new player, so we will see what they bring. But historically, actually, I wind up losing to people who are brand new. Shout out to Ball. He's got a pretty scary rain team, but we'll get to him eventually. So in this matchup, first thing I look at is just speed tiers, and honestly just either a big threat that I have on my team that they cannot stop, or in this case, looking at a threat that they have on their team. So this week, I'm looking at especially Mamoswine as a major threat. Ground and ice coverage honestly annihilates my entire team, so I need to get creative with how I'm going to stop that. Along with Bisharp, and just being careful that if I do decide to defog with my Braviary at some point, that I don't mess up and wind up giving him +2 for free. Other things that I remember looking at is he has a decent amount of ghost types, or at least 2 offensive ghost types on the special side and the physical side, Chandelure and Mimikyu. So I knew that it wasn't necessarily the best matchup for a psychic type, but when you're Mew and you can do literally whatever you want, I think you got to bring them on every single week. Also looking at his team, looking at leads, I was predicting that Grilvantula would come out and try to get webs up, as most of my team is affected by webs and is grounded. The only Mons not grounded would be Claydol, which would be has Levitate and Braviary, who's a flying type. The rest of the Mons are going to be grounded. I didn't think he doesn't have any hazard removers, so that is something that I considered looking at his team. But ultimately, I just thought, all right, I need to have switch-ins for Mamoswine. Most of his team is super offensive, so I need to make sure I carry coverage for his threats because I can't allow them to set up. And then lastly, having 2 Will-O-Whispers in Mew and Arcanine, I knew I wanted to bring Will-O-Whispers because most of his team got hit by it pretty hard. Mimikyu didn't want to get Will-O-Wisp, Gallade, Mamoswine, Bisharp, all didn't want to get hit by a Will-O-Wisp. So that's kind of like what I was looking at going into the matchup. And then I was just trying to figure out how I wanted to lead exactly against a Galvantula. Ultimately, as I've already played the match, and I'll show you guys the match in this same video, actually. I plan on posting these before I play the match as well, and then have a little recap. But what wound up happening is he actually led Mamoswine. In testing, he also led Mamoswine as well, the person I was testing with, and that's shout out to Sorbs, my cousin. Me and him prep every week. Actually, we got a big battle coming up next week, so I'm excited to play him. But let's move on to the team and kind of what I was thinking with the team. And we'll bounce back and forth a little bit too. All right, so here's this team, week 1, season 5 versus Bindolin. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I actually looked at my Arcanine and thought, if I can switch into his Mamoswine, that would be fantastic. I was obviously Arcanine's weak to ground typing, but I figured if I could predict if he was going for a ground move or an ice move, At least I could get Arcanine in and then hopefully get a Will-O-Wisp off. That's not what happened in the game exactly. I kind of wish I would have brought a more offensive Arcanine, but this wound up working really, really well. This defensive Arcanine set. I did bring the Crunch for his Chandelure as packing only fire type moves. The Chandelure could come in and set up on me, so I couldn't allow that to happen. As for my Mew, I wanted to get really crafty with my Mew set. I brought Aurora Sphere for the Bisharp to Oko it, but I wanted to bring, instead of Stealth Rock, I wanted to bring Psychic Terrain if his Bisharp came in and wanted to Sucker Punch me, just to stop that from happening. But I decided against it and decided, well, I would just go for a Will-O-Wisp anyway and just hope that I hit that 85% chance against his Bisharp. But looking at the rest of my Mew, I was worried about Ghost type coverage on his team, and so I did bring the Kasib berry. That's the first time I actually had to look it up to figure out what berry it was, but that halves the damage from Ghost type attacks. But the Aurora Sphere was for the Bisharp, and then I just brought Hex because my plan was to Will-O-Wisp everything and then start hexing away with my Mew. Very defensive Mew, but fast enough to outspeed everything it needed to. Same with my Arcanine, just because getting the Will-O-Wisp off before you take a hit is a big deal. What wound up being the MVP of the match actually was my Golisopod, and we'll look at that later. But having First Impression and Aqua Jet as priority were just amazing in this match. And I thought about bringing Choice Band Golisopod, as Choice Banded First Impression pretty much killed everything on my opponent's team. He really didn't have any good switch-ins to it, at least. But I didn't want to be limited to one attack and having to switch out. And so I opted for just this Citrus Berry, 2 priority moves, and then Close Combat, as you can see. The Close Combat came in handy as my opponent did think they were safe setting up with Bisharp, and I was able to get a nice Close Combat off in the match, and I'll show you here in a second. Drampa actually turned out, I knew Drampa it wound up being my Dragon type, and I just didn't know how it was. I didn't really like its stats unless it was under Trick Room, but I started looking into it, and Drampa with Assault Vest is actually awesome. It takes all those elemental attacks very, very well, and can dish back very powerfully with its special attack being so high. So I was really impressed with Drampa, and that wound up being a blanket check to a lot of his special attackers, and then Braviary and Jolteon to finish up the team. Jolteon as a late game cleaner, as long as I can keep webs off the field, and then Braviary, honestly, with flying and fighting coverage, just smacked his team really, really well offensively. But it was my only way of hazard removing this week, and so I was a little bit concerned, as I might have to waste it to go for defog at some point. But we'll see how it turns out here. Let's look at the replay. So it is a pretty quick match, and kind of what wound up happening is I just attacked what was in front of me, I guess, if I were to sum it up into one. So I'm going to turn the music off because I think the music's kind of annoying, but let's just click play here. Turn one, also my team is named after, so this turn one play, let's just go back here, play, and we'll just pause it. This turn one play, actually, luckily I played it out in my preparation. And as Cooper actually led with Mamoswine in preparation as well, I thought this could be Life Orb or it could be Focus Sash, but I knew I wanted to get out of there. If he was Choice Scarf, he would have outsped me, as I did not bring a ton of speed on my Braviary, but it is Choice Scarf, so I was able to move first. I did not kill it with Close Combat, so I decided to just U-turn for Chip and go into my Arcanine, hoping to take an Ice attack. Luckily, he did not predict and go for an Earthquake. I thought he might get Rocks Up, but luckily he did wind up going for that Ice attack, and I'm able to bring out my Arcanine. Now, this is where I really wish I had, and I'll let this play, I really wish I had offensive Arcanine, as I could have easily OHKO'd the Mamoswine after taking the Ice hit. But having all that defenses actually helps me here as I survive an attack from the Mimikyu that comes in afterwards. Luckily, he opts for getting up rocks, takes a little more chip on my Fenrir after all my team or all my Pokemon are named after Norse gods and legends and such. I knew that the Mimikyu couldn't hurt me unless it SD'd, but I knew I needed to get rid of its I needed to get rid of its disguise. And so as long as I got rid of its disguise, actually now with Gen 8 lowering or the Mimikyu actually taking damage after losing the disguise, bringing it down to 90, I actually calced my Bravery to have its Brave Bird hit Mimikyu for 90% damage with the Brave Bird. So Mimikyu could not use its priority in Shadow Sneak to hit me because I'm a normal type. And then I could, that was my plan with revenge killing Mimikyu because I knew that was a huge threat for me. So here I just go for the Brave Bird. He doesn't opt to switch out. He brings in, I believe, his electric type, Galvantula. I would have done a ton of damage to Galvantula, but I knew I had a for sure switch in my Jägermonder, or I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but Drampa. And so I decided to go play the safe play. I did have Shadow Ball, and I thought about Shadow Balling because I knew Gallade had to be the switch here. But then I decided not to. I just needed a little bit of chip. I did wind up calking this beforehand, but my Glossopod I knew only took about 25% from all his attacks unless he went for a Stone Edge. And so I was able to switch my Glossopod in. And luckily I had that Citrus Berry so that I didn't have to get immediately switched out. I could recover that health and then eventually, force his Gallade out. He did go to Galvantula, who's actually a huge threat against me. I was able to lower that down and then pick it off with the Aqua Jet, which was huge. But here's probably the play of the game, I'd say, is Bisharp is in and decides to Sword Dance in front of my Glossopod. Glossopod is a beast, and now that it does get close combat, that is a major, major threat. So anyways, luckily I had the coverage for it. And what's funny is I close combated the Bisharp in testing and also in the game. So it was hilarious actually how closely the testing game went to the actual game. That usually doesn't happen. But I knew with Glossopod he could clean up the game with his first impressions, or I just had to get into my Braviary at some point to clean the game up, as it didn't get hit by the webs and I could still keep my speed up. I decided to just opt for chip, emergency exit out of here. And then hit my 2 Brave Birds to win the game. So no, it was a super fun game. GG's to Bindalin. Welcome to the league. I look forward to next week as I take on Sorbs, who has won 2 championships in the past. Also my prepping partner, so I might need to find a new prepping partner for this week. But it's always fun to play him. Little family pride as we're cousins. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace.